Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Shout out to you guys. Let me just say, Banco, thank you so much for gifting 10 memberships. If you guys got memberships from Banco, please drop a heart in the chat. I do want to say something real quick though, and I'm not going to be paying attention to the chat because what I have to say is very important, and I don't want to, be distracted too much. So I apologize. I'm not ignoring your comments. I'll read some of your comments after I'm done addressing some things. This is it's very important what I have to say and what I'm about to share. So, thank you, Punko, again, and shout out to everybody, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Whew, I'm. Let me just. I have to get started, and I have to tell you guys something that this is really concerning to me, and it's just trying to digest some of this information that's there is just concerning. But I have to say something, and I have to speak out about it. There is a woman by the name, for the purposes of this live, we're going to name her Jane Doe. There is a woman by the name of Jane Doe who was represented by an attorney that sits in the board of ChildUSA. This attorney by the name of Brian Kent, also Mike Rinder sits on that board, and other attorneys that represent victims. One specific one that I could just reading the bios is one of them actually represents several of the Epstein victims. And then there's also one attorney that has helped with the Catholic Church abuses and everything that's been put out there. So this attorney, it came to my attention that this attorney that sits on this board, the same board that Mike Rinder sits at, there's been some stuff happening and not a lot of people know about it. And I have a feeling that there's going to be some attorneys watching this. So I need to make sure that I'm, very much careful and factual to what I'm about to say right now. This is Brian Kent. Brian is a former sex crimes prosecutor, and he's won a couple of awards in recognition of that. He represented and represents several of the Scientology victims. There was another attorney by the name of Neil who submitted a complaint against Brian. And if you guys know attorneys, typically attorneys don't like to file complaints against other attorneys, but it happened. This is this complaint that the Jane Doe leaked to about 25 people, 30 people. And in this complaint, it says that Brian Kent violated several ethical, there's violations of ethics in his behavior. This complaint was submitted to the Pennsylvania bar, and it's my understanding that it's under investigation. All right, so a lot that I'm going to say is going to be alleged, so please note that. But this document, I went through it, I redacted all identified information, such as names, location, to support the Jane Doe that's named here. The Jane Doe leaked it. And the thing that really bothers me about this, outside of the clear concerns that I have for just this attorney, is that he's represented and represents, and he's been referred to a lot of clients that are in the Scientology, you know, area, survivors, people that have left. So this is why I'm struggling, just like really piecing things together and understanding how deep this rabbit hole really goes. But it has to be exposed because I have to kind of wonder and question how many other people out there do they not know that the behavior that this attorney has engaged in? How many people should know and don't know? How many people have been referred to? I mean, I want to know. There's so many questions that I have. And this is Child USA. And they sit there and they help change laws, enact, they do all this stuff, really trying to protect victims. Do those attorneys know what is going on here? Let me read some of this. And there's clearly I've redacted some information because some stuff we don't really need to know, but you guys could kind of read in between the lines. This is that phrase, exactly. This is what you call hiding in plain sight. So it says to the disciplinary board, our firm has represented Jane Doe, a plaintiff in Baxter versus Miscavige, since February 23rd of 2021 in litigation against the Church of Scientology. During our representation, we became aware of conduct by Jane Doe's previous attorney, Brian Kent, which merits the Office of Disciplinary Counsel's attention. Mr. Kent began representing Jane Doe in a similar matter in spring of 2019 and ended his representation in January of 2021. During that time, Mr. Kent engaged in behavior constituting violations of rules of professional conduct, and they list all the rules number there, which includes engaging in non-pre-existing sexual relations with a client. We therefore request that the disciplinary council investigate Mr. Kent's actions as Jane Doe's counsel. Yeah, this is the complaint. In 2018, Mr. Kent, a Philadelphia law firm, from the Philadelphia law firm, excuse me, began representing several plaintiffs in potential litigation against the Church of Scientology. In spring 2019, Jane Doe, a survivor of the Church of Scientology's abusive practices, was put in touch with his office, and Mr. Kent began handling Jane Doe. After an initial phone call, Mr. Kemp began following Jane Doe's social media accounts and liking her posts. He also initiated lengthy personal phone calls with Jane Doe. During these calls, Mr. Kent spoke to Jane Doe about the sexual abuse he suffered as a child, knowing that he could quickly gain the trust of Jane Doe, a survivor of sexual abuse. As a result of this grooming, Jane Doe quickly began to see Mr. Kent as her hero. And there's a footnote in this complaint that says the text messages, emails, WhatsApp messages, and audio recordings of phone calls referenced herein are available for inspection upon request. So, this attorney who represented or represents various clients in Scientology, right, starts this like social media following. She's a client. He starts telling his client, listen, I'm also a former victim of abuse, and this is my abuse, right? He's also representing other people. So just think about the fact that this would have put others in jeopardy, or it does put others in jeopardy. This was a document that many people were aware about, including Mr. Mike Rinder, which I believe, now I must say allegedly, that a lot of the client referrals were coming from that board, the Child USA. It's my understanding that the Jane Doe is also friends with Mike Rinder, so he was aware that this was going on. Let me keep reading, okay? Okay, so as a result of this grooming, Jane Doe quickly began to see Mr. Kent as her hero. Mr. Kent soon reached out to Jane Doe on WhatsApp to obtain documents related to her case. The WhatsApp communication became flirtatious, and Mr. Kent frequently told Jane Doe, a resident of, and the location has been redacted, that he wished to visit her. He also questioned her about whether she was happily married. His messages to her included an invitation for her to share a hotel bed with him, as well as a request for potential itinerary for a trip to redacted location. Additionally, he told Jane Doe that he had met for a reason and it was meant to be. Vulnerable and flattered by the attention, Jane Doe began having romantic feelings for Mr. Kent. Hmm. In early 2019, Jane Doe was asked to participate in a taping of a television show in Los Angeles hosted by another Scientology survivor. Can you guys guess what show that was? Put it in the chat. Mr. Kent offered to attend the taping with Jane Doe and pay for her hotel. He then booked two hotel rooms, one for Jane Doe under his name to prevent anyone from knowing. Leading up to the trip, Mr. Kent told Jane Doe in a phone call that he was having marital problems and should have never been married. In a in a conversation on WhatsApp, Mr. Kent complained about his health. Jane Doe, a certified masseuse, felt sorry for him and offered to give him a massage when they met. Mr. Kent encouraged the offer. He also asked Jane Doe to delete their communication on WhatsApp and continue to do so over the next several months. Jane Doe did not. When Jane Doe arrived in Los Angeles, she met with Mr. Kent, who had arrived from Philadelphia for the first time in person. At the taping of the television show, Mr. Kent hugged Jane Doe and publicly oogled her, remarking, "You look good for someone who hasn't slept for 48 hours." Jane Doe felt embarrassed and objectified. After the taping was finished, they returned to the hotel room in Mr. Kent's rental car. At the hotel, Mr. Kent invited Jane Doe to his room so that Jane Doe could give him a massage. They had discussed on WhatsApp. Mr. Kent commented that he was shocked at how slim Jane Doe, and then that has been redacted because of the clear stuff that's in there. Yeah, it's awful, guys. It's awful. This is an attorney that represents several or represented several of the victims, Jane Doe's survivors. There's articles of this out on Google. Go ahead and look it up. This is a complaint from one of those victims. This complaint was leaked. And several people, including the Aftermath Foundation and so many others, and in the Child US, are aware of this. I'd like to understand how. Just a question, because look, we have very reputable, my understanding, attorneys. Ms. Brittany Henderson here, who is the secretary of the board. She is right over here. My Fight for the Victims of Jeffrey Epstein was featured in the Lifetime production Surviving Jeffrey Epstein. These are people, these attorneys, they're all sitting together. You have somebody here, another attorney from the Catholic Church, right here, represented survivors from the Catholic Church. Y'all go read those bios, okay? Other CASA appointed folks, other Esquires and JDs. There's Mr. Kent. Oh, look at, and let me go down a little bit more. Look at this. Another person right here. Another Miss Mary right here who represented victims of sexual assault and abuse. Okay? Here's another attorney. Another one, trauma informed. Here's another lady who's an Emmy award winning person, international bestseller, 11 books. Okay, here's another one. Wait, there's another right here. Jeffrey, here's Jeffrey, who says, he's been featured in TED X as a speaker. And then there's Mike Rinder. More esquires, more attorneys, another attorney, sex trafficking. I mean, these are people that sit there and make laws and do changes and enact things. I want to know, did you guys know that there was a complaint filed here and it's being investigated? And another attorney filed it. That attorney is not going to risk his law license. He put in the footnotes that there are receipts. The Jane Doe on this let a lot of people know about what happened. She leaked the document. And this guy got referrals from the aftermath show to represent these victims. There's actual articles out there where he's named. What is going on? Let's keep reading the document. Of course, like I said, we redacted information that needs to be redacted, absolutely. I'm telling you guys, I'm like shaking reading this because it's infuriating, but okay. So Jane Doe was distraught and confused. The following day, Mr. Kent again invited Jane Doe to his hotel room. Later, they went to dinner together with another of Mr. Kent's Scientology clients. After dinner, Jane Doe and Mr. Kent returned to his room, Mr. Kent's room. Mr. Kent told her that 9 out of 10 men would gladly have sex with her. This made Jane Doe feel uncomfortable. Another redacted portion, please note that at about 4 a.m., Mr. Kent woke Jane Doe and dismissed her back from the hotel room while he called his wife. And he's married too, by the way. At least at the time of this complaint or when this was happening, he was married. After that call, Mr. Kent invited Jane Doe back into the room and into bed, where Mr. Kent proceeded to lay, and I'm going to stop right there. Jane Doe accompanied Mr. Kent to the airport for his return flight to Philadelphia. Jane Doe flew back to redacted location. From July through September 2019, Mr. Kent ceased initiating communication with Jane Doe on WhatsApp and pushed Jane Doe and her case onto his law partners, causing her to believe that she had done something to destroy their attorney client relationship and what she believed was their romantic relationship. Nevertheless, Mr. Kent continued to have lengthy phone conversations or phone calls with Jane Doe, leading to her increased confusion about their professional and personal connection. Mr. Kent alternated between ignoring her and embracing her, and his back and forth severely traumatized Jane Doe, leading to her eventually seek professional mental health treatment. In early fall 2019, after filing a criminal complaint against Scientology with the police department in Clearwater, Florida, Jane Doe was contacted by representatives of the U.S. Department of Justice who were investigating Scientology and wanted to interview her in person in November. She asked Mr. Kent, her attorney, to attend the meeting with her. Mr. Kent said he was unavailable in November, causing Jane Doe to feel worried and abandoned. He later told her that he would attend a meeting with her if it was scheduled for October. Even though the DOJ meeting was directly related to and would potentially impact or be impacted by the civil claims Jane Doe believed Mr. Kent to be developing on her behalf, Mr. Kent informed Jane Doe that he would not front her travel expenses or hotel fare. As a result, Jane Doe spent over $2,000 of her own money to travel to the US. So, my understanding is that Mr. Kent was picking up a lot of these cases pro bono. Um, yeah. So, you have a victim of abuse through this cult, right? He's an attorney. He's representing them and others. He sits on this board with Mike Rinder. He's getting all these referrals, taking on this stuff pro bono, right? They have a meeting with the Department of Justice. This happens. She's confused. Like, what the hell did I do? Right? It runs deep. Let's keep reading. Okay. And again, this complaint was filed by another attorney. And let me tell you, I kind of feel like, man, this attorney probably feels like, oh my God, like in order for me to effectively represent this Jane Doe, I have to file this because, and I would assume my understanding is that attorneys don't like to file complaints on each other. They don't like to do that. So you imagine that not only is, he exposing this attorney, but he's also exposing himself and also his bar license is up, like that. That is huge. It's a complex situation, right? It's not easy to explain, but it is what it is. Let me keep reading. So he tells her, I'm not going to front all your expenses. Jane Doe had to spend over $2,000 of her own monies to travel to the US. Leading up to October 2019 meeting with the DOJ, Mr. Kent once more initiated daily flirtatious conversation with Jane Doe over WhatsApp. On one occasion, he sent Jane Doe messages while he was in the shower. He reacted approvingly to revealing photographs of Jane Doe and requested that she give him a massage when they met later that month. Few days prior to the flight to the US, Jane Doe informed Mr. Kent that she had not yet confirmed the exact time of their meeting with DOJ. Mr. Kent became enraged, done this administrative work for her own case and threatened not to accompany her to the meeting. Jane Doe felt devastated and concerned that she would not be able to see Mr. Kent. As a result of Mr. Kent's outburst, Jane Doe was forced to once more contact the DOJ on her own to finalize the meeting dates. On October 13th of 2019, Jane Doe and Mr. Kent arrived separately at Los Angeles for the upcoming DOJ meeting. Jane Doe, still concerned that she had upset Mr. Kent, went to great lengths to ensure that he was pleased to represent her. Jane Doe purchased massage oil for the massage he had requested over WhatsApp and presented him with a small bracelet as a gift, hoping to win his favor back, hoping to win back his favor. Jane Doe and Mr. Kent had dinner together and then returned to the room. You guys can, it's redacted, okay? Mr. Kent had promised Jane Doe that they would review documents related to her case together. The following day, they reviewed the documents for approximately 10 minutes before Mr. Kent told her that he had other work to attend to and ordered her to organize and print key case documents on her own. Understandably concerned for her case, Jane Doe began to cry. Mr. Kent became annoyed with her and told her that he didn't like girls who were drama like that. This caused Jane Doe to become increasingly upset. Additionally, Mr. Kent abruptly told Jane Doe that she couldn't sleep in his room again. Having only purchased a hotel room for one night, Jane Doe emptied her bank account to book a separate room for 2 additional nights. Jane Doe felt rejected and hurt and believed that she had done something wrong to Mr. Kent to withdraw from her. In reality, Mr. Kent knew his behavior with Jane Doe was inappropriate, felt no compulsion to stop it, dealt with his shame by blaming his victim, as so many manipulators and abusers do. Jane Doe was distressed for the rest of the day. Let me stop right here. I have to take a drink of water, guys. Give me one sec. Okay. Jane Doe returned to redacted area location. Hold up. Did I just skip? I'm sorry, y'all. Let me stop. The following day, Mr. Kent and Jane Doe met with the DOJ. Mr. Kent resumed his flirtatious behavior. As a result, Jane Doe was overwhelmed, unprepared, and emotionally confused when she attended this important meeting. Afterwards, Jane Doe requested that Mr. Kent promise that he would not resume ignoring her when he returned to Philadelphia. Jane Doe drove Mr. Kent to the airport. Jane Doe returned to redacted location. Between October 2019 and January 2020, Mr. Kent ignored communication with Jane Doe. He blocked her on WhatsApp, her primary means of communication with him about her case, and told her to only communicate with him via email. Jane Doe complied with this request, and yet he ignored her emails. For example, Mr. Kent asked Jane Doe to send him a narrative statement in support of her case. So she prepared and sent him such a statement. Mr. Kent did not acknowledge it. He then required Jane Doe to do much of the legal work that should have been done by him or with his help to prepare for her case, including organizing documents, drafting detailed explanations of Scientology terminology. Jane Doe spent hours doing this work, sent everything to Mr. Kent, and received no response. Jane Doe began to suspect that Mr. Kent was not reading or reviewing anything she had sent. So I'm having a reaction, you guys, because you know, I've told you guys I'm a social worker by trade. Like reading this and knowing everything that she's been through, and then reading the part where not only is she being victimized by this power, and position situation, she's being victimized. She's also having to do the legal work for everything that's going on, right? Like the power dynamics here, he's in a position of trust right now. This is just too much, okay? All right. In November of 2019, Jane Doe attended a meeting with the DOJ and Mr. Kent and other Scientology clients. Mr. Kent was not present at the meeting. Jane Doe attempted to reach Mr. Kent before the meeting to discuss the case. He refused to answer, claiming he was no longer texting his clients. However, Jane Doe learned that Mr. Kent was, in fact, texting other clients at this meeting. Jane Doe was upset and confused that Mr. Kent had lied and was purposely shutting her out. By January 2020, Jane Doe had begun having nightmares due to the constant emotional turmoil surrounding Mr. Kent's representation on her case. Around this time, Mr. Kent and other Scientology clients told Jane Doe that they did not believe Mr. Kent was effectively representing them, and that they had also reached out to him multiple times about their case to no avail. One client claimed that Mr. Kent was gaslighting the Scientology clients and blaming them for problems with their case. Jane Doe wrote to Mr. Kent via an email detailing these concerns. Mr. Kent responded with response was outrage. He responded with outrage. He scolded her for speaking with other Scientology clients and told her that by doing so, she had jeopardized his firm's representation of them all. He further reprimanded Jane Doe for failing to respect his boundaries, despite the fact that he continually instigated personal contact with Jane Doe and breached his ethical duties to her and her case and time again. By the end of January 2020, believing that she had jeopardized her case and ruined her relationship with Mr. Kent, Jane Doe began experiencing flashbacks to her abuse experience in Scientology. She begged Mr. Kent to speak with her on the phone, and he agreed. During their phone call, Mr. Kent blamed his poor professional and his poor personal and professional behavior on bad experiences with his other Scientology clients. He claimed he was taking out his frustrations on Jane Doe. Jane Doe remained confused by his behavior. He informed Jane Doe that he had distanced himself from her because she was extremely attractive, explaining that he needed to protect himself as a result. Yeah, his boundaries. His boundaries. Mhm. During the phone call, Mr. Kent also assured Jane Doe that she definitely had a case and requested all mental health records from her treating providers. Jane Doe informed Mr. Kent that she had discussed him in sessions with her therapist and was concerned about the impact this might have on his case. Clearly panicked that his inappropriate behavior with Jane Doe would be revealed in basic discovery, Mr. Kent demanded that Jane Doe ask her therapist to delete all references to him in her provider notes. He requested that Jane Doe contact him as soon as this was done. At Mr. Kent's instructions, Jane Doe asked her therapist to remove all mentions of Mr. Kent for her records. Jane Doe's therapist did not comply with this request, as they should not have. As they should not have. He tried to cover it up, allegedly, based on the documentation. They should be all therapists know should be confidential, but if she self-disclosed to him that she had talked about him, he's worried. He's telling her, remove it, redact it. You don't have that power, sir. You don't. You don't. Whew. Okay. I hope you guys understand that I'm having like a physical reaction reading this because it's just so deep. And then again, this is an attorney that sits at Child USA who has again prosecuted and represented folks. This is just I sitting on this and reading this and understanding this. You guys have to understand how like hard this is. Um yeah. In March 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Mr. Kent began texting Jane Doe frequently, discussing personal topics such as his children, marriage, and his personal feelings about romantic relationships. Mr. Kent went as far as to ask Jane Doe if she hated that he was married and that he was her attorney. Jane Doe was confused by the question, and Mr. Kent responded that they could not be together romantically because he was her attorney, despite his clear pursuit of her. Over the next several months, Mr. Kent and Jane Doe spoke frequently on the phone and over text messages entirely about Mr. Kent's personal life. Mr. Kent leaned on Jane Doe as an emotional support system and as an outlet for his marital and emotional problems. He confided in Jane Doe about previous extramarital affairs, including one with the woman in his office who had later sued him. Who had later sued him. We're almost done, guys. We're almost done. By August 2020, Mr. Kent and other Scientology plaintiffs had terminated their representations with Mr. Kent's office and contacted our office about pursuing their legal claims. Y'all hear that first sentence? By August 2020, Mr. Kent's Scientology plaintiffs had terminated their representation with Mr. Kent's office and contacted our office about pursuing their claims. Do they know about this complaint that was submitted to the bar by an attorney? And if you guys are in Child USA, I need to, they probably don't even know any of this. I bet my Grinder does because he was referring them to this attorney. Keep that in mind. I'm kind of wondering who else and what else, because it's my understanding that season 2 of the Aftermath Foundation, there was an episode where they did like the little Jehovah Witnesses uh, um, part of cults. Brian Kent and Marcy Hamilton, which is like the founder of Child USA, that's how they met Mike Rinder at that time. It was through that episode. Okay. And so he ended up meeting a lot of the survivors of Scientology. By the end of season 3, Brian Kent was representing all of these victims, the majority of them. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, what about the Aftermath Foundation? Because it's my understanding that the Jane Doe was leaking information. She leaked it. She leaked. The leaking is through the Jane Doe. But what is infuriating to me is that how many of the other clients that he represent are those cases now in jeopardy? Has his attorney's behavior jeopardized everybody? The cases that for everybody that that has been going through this, and they sit in the board of Child USA, and you mean to tell me that nobody's gonna talk about this shit? You have so many esquires up there. The lady that represents the Epstein survivors sits up there. Can somebody let her know about this complaint? Is she aware of this? Because I don't know if Mike Rinder's going to tell her. I mean, seriously. Okay. Still harboring romantic feelings for Mr. Kent and concern for his emotional state, Jane Doe remained with Mr. Kent's firm. In early January of 2021, Mr. Kent abruptly informed Jane Doe via phone call that he could no longer represent her. Jane Doe felt abandoned and devastated, not just because of his lost relationship, but also because Mr. Kent had wasted 2 years during which she could have filed her lawsuit against Scientology. 2 years. Okay. Once Mr. Kent's representation ended, Jane Doe signed with our firm. But Jane Doe and Mr. Kent's correspondence continue. At one point, Mr. Kent accused this, you guys better sit down for this one. Sit down for this one because it's going to make you upset. At one point, Mr. Kent accused Jane Doe of initiating previous physical and sexual contact with them, comparing her to his childhood abusers by telling her that her behavior was like the abuse that he had suffered as a child. This gaslighting greatly distressed Jane Doe. Mr. Kent continued to text and call Jane Doe for the next several months. Purportedly for emotional support, he also asked Jane Doe to obtain a copy of the complaints against Scientology that our firm later filed on her behalf to examine our work product. He asked her not to let us know that he had requested the document. In their last phone call, August 2021, Mr. Kent acknowledged that he had sexually pursued Jane Doe with no intention of having a romantic or personal relationship with her. Jane Doe realized Mr. Kent had been untruthful to her at every stage of his representation, and her legal claims had potentially been damaged as a fucking result. Now, I added the fucking part. I added that part. I wonder if Stephanie is going to write an article about this defending Mike Rinder. Hmm. I mean, shit, you already, why not? I'm just wondering, who else? Who else? Well, please stand up for those. Who else? This attorney wrote this complaint, send it to the Pennsylvania bar, risking, risking him being looked at. There are footnotes in there that say that there's receipts. Who's going to defend him? Y'all, he knew about this. A lot of people knew about this shit. Let me know. John A. Tech, I got your email. Sir, I would love to talk to you, but let me tell you this. I don't think you're going to want to talk to me after this. Just letting you know. I'm just as real as they come. It not like Jennifer Lopez real, but like real, real. Mhm. Oh, yes, I agree. Let's go ahead and continue. Okay. There is substantial basis. Now, this is where he outlines every rule that he broke as an attorney. So we're going to review those because this is an important part of this document. Okay, a lawyer as a member of the legal profession is a representative of clients, an officer of the legal system, and a public citizen having a special responsibility for the quality of justice. Mr. Kent engaged in a pattern of abuse which tarnished the quality of justice attorneys are expected to uphold. His poor decision making, ongoing psychological manipulation, sexual conduct, and his duties to Jane Doe and the profession are clear violation of the rules. Mr. Kent took advantage of Jane Doe, who came to see him when she was in a vulnerable state. His disregard for the interests of Jane Doe and his abuse of his position as an attorney justify extreme sanctions. Okay? Mr. Kent violated the rule. A lawyer shall not have sexual relations with the client unless a consensual relationship exists between them with client-lawyer relationship commence. Mr. Kent began representing Jane Doe in spring of 2019 and initiated and engaged in sexual activity with her in June of 2019 and October of 2019, not including the hundreds, perhaps thousands, of sexually charged messages that he exchanged with her during his 2 year representation. They did not have a pre existing relationship prior to his representation commencing, and his conduct is a clear violation of rule. This is so interesting to me because wait a minute now, wait a minute. Wasn't this like the judgment of Aaron sitting on the board? Everybody wanted to judge his, well, he's married. He's doing this. He's having sex. Here's an attorney that sits on the board of Child USA next to Mike Rinder, and they be doing this. And it's his own client. He did, Canadian girl. He did. A lot of people knew. My understanding is about good 25 people knew about this because this document was leaked. But there's more to that. There's more to that. hmm They sit on the same board, you guys. They share. They sit on the same board. It's the hypocrisy at its finest. Kind of makes you wonder what receipts this attorney has, what evidence, what do they have? What do they have? Okay. Mr. Kent violated rules of professional conduct. A lawyer shall provide competent representation to a client. Competent representation requires the legal knowledge, skills, thoroughness, and preparation reasonably necessary for the representation. Keep in mind, allegedly through this document, she was having to do her own legal work and prepare stuff for him. The required attention and preparation are determined by part in part by what is at stake. Major litigation and complex transactions ordinarily require more extensive treatment. Mr. Kent was at no time adequately or thoroughly prepared to represent Jane Doe in major litigation against the Church of Scientology. He engaged in a cursory review of important documents even before an important meeting with the DOJ. Now, that's what pissed me off. I mean, a lot of this pisses me off, but the DOJ, it's hard to get a meeting with the DOJ. And then this happens. He refused and failed to speak with Jane Doe to learn more about the complex web of the church and its agents and required Jane Doe to do much of the legwork he should have done on his own, including preparing, organizing, and even printing key documents. He became angry with Jane Doe when she attempted to speak with him about the case, and he continually ignored documents and the information that Jane Doe sent him for review, failing to do the bare minimum, acknowledge receipts. Mr. Kent then abruptly dismissed Jane Doe as a client after several of his other Scientology clients abandoned his firm. His actions suggest that he had no intention of prosecuting claims on Jane Doe behalf, and that he strung her along for 2 years purely for his own personal and emotional satisfaction. Yeah, I would say so. I think he strung her along to keep her quiet. I'm wondering. I think that's how why he strung her along. 2 years. 2 years. Another rule. A professional conduct rule. A lawyer A lawyer should pursue a matter on behalf of a client despite opposition, obstruction, or personal inconvenience to the lawyer, and take whatever lawful and ethical measures are required to vindicate a client's cause or endeavor. A lawyer must also act with commitment and dedication to the interests of the client and with zeal in advocacy upon the client's behalf. Mr. Kent ignored Jane Doe when she annoyed him or it was convenient for him, and he resumed communicating with her when he needed emotional support or a confidence boost. His actions were detrimental to Jane Doe's emotional well being and her case. At no point during the 2 years he represented her was he diligent or prompt in his investigation of legal claims. And this resulted in the passing of 2 years during which a lawsuit could have been filed. He was neither committed nor dedicated in his lack of interest in her case because it became increasingly evident as time progressed. He failed to prioritize her case and her interests above the personal inconveniences it posed to him, and his conduct justifies discipline. And so, therefore, he likewise violated another rule, okay, which states reasonable conduct with client about the means by which the client's objectives are to be accomplished. Keep the client reasonably informed about the status of the matter. Promptly comply with reasonable requests for information. Mr. Kent refused to communicate with Jane Doe when it was bothersome to him and refused to acknowledge her thoughts and questions about her case because he was ashamed of the situation he had created. He left Jane Doe questioning about what was happening and failed to consult or collaborate with her about the case objectives, misleading her into believing that his firm would ultimately file a lawsuit on her behalf when he likely had no intentions of doing so. Whew. All right. Number E, and then we're done. I think there's one more, and then we're done. I am noticing. I want to get your. I know. Meanwhile, thank you so much for saying. Meanwhile, we're here. We're trying to drag Aaron. Meanwhile, in their own backyard. Thank you. Shout out to Ono Nora. Is it Scientology 101? This is crazy, y'all. This is crazy, but it's like disturbing. Listen, I'm having a lot of reactions. I don't even know where to go from here. Um, Understanding the complexity of this is very disturbing. Okay, and what people knew, what people didn't know, what they didn't say, this is disturbing. And then they're sitting on Child USA, the pioneers, the leaders, the advocates of child victims. Are you sure about that? I don't know. I don't know. Mr. Kemp violated another rule which prohibits a lawyer from representing a client when there is a concurrent conflict of interest. This occurred when there is a significant risk that the representation of one or more clients will be materially limited by the lawyer's responsibility to another client, a former client, or a third person, or by a personal interest of the lawyer. Okay, Mr. Kent's personal interest or his sexual pursuit of Jane Doe created a conflict that not only jeopardized her case, but the cases of his other Scientology clients. Other Scientology clients, if you're watching this, ask yourselves, how long have you had to wait for justice? How long? Ask yourselves. Who sat there and didn't speak up about the fact that this has been going on? Because if you're silent, you're complicit. You're complicit. Several of whom are now represented by our firm. His refusal to investigate and communicate, as well as his continued manipulation of Jane Doe, pose a threat to the case of every Scientology client he represents and perhaps many others. Indeed, he informed Jane Doe that his own misconduct, was a result of bad experiences with other former Scientologists, suggesting that he lacked basic respect for the people that he represented. And lastly, the last complaint, another rule violation. Mr. Kent demanded that Jane Doe delete her WhatsApp messages with him. He also told her to ask her treating therapist to remove all mention of him from her medical records. In doing so, Mr. Kent attempted to tamper with evidence material to Jane Doe. Claims against Scientology, this may have now this may now have implications of our firm's case against Scientology. Mr. Kent's conduct is a potential violation of such Rule 3.3, which prohibits making false statements to the tribunal. Um, this is also another rule violation which prohibits unlawful altering, destroying, or concealing documents or other material having potential evidentiary value, or assisting another person to do such an act, and falsifying evidence, counseling, or assisting a witness to testify falsely. In light of this egregious nature of Mr. Kent's misconduct, we respectfully request that the disciplinary board commence an investigation. Mr. Kent's violations of rules are particularly heinous, given that he holds himself as a champion of survivors of sexual abuse. Our firm will cooperate to the fullest extent, and there are footnotes in this document. And Child USA, if you need the document, let me know. The only thing I did was upload the document to redact what needed to be redacted. This is a lot. I'm just telling you guys, this is a lot. And then he says right here, we have reasons to believe that Mr. Kent may have also asked his other former Scientology clients to delete their WhatsApp communications with him. Let me go up to the footnote that says, look, this attorney is not going to risk his law license to file something fake or frivolous against anybody. The text messages, emails, WhatsApp messages, and audio recordings of phone calls referenced herein are available for inspections upon request. This document was leaked. It's about 25 or so, if not even more people that have it out there. Some people don't know about it. Some people knew, I don't know. It was leaked. That's where this document came from. You can't be sure that this is his only victim. You're absolutely right. You can't. So, like I said, this Jane Doe leaked the document to not only 20 plus, 25 plus people, but let Mike Rinder and friends and company know about what's going on. Right. Shout out to the ONR. You have to get rid of everything to be able to craft your own narrative. That's why everything is on paper in Scientology Shredding Tech 101. Let me shout some of you guys out. I do apologize. Like I said, I couldn't really look at the chat. Thank you for um, Wim, thank you for gifting memberships. Thank you, thank you. Love Cats, Eat More Pizza, Doc, Mountain Princess, thank you for being a member for 3 months. Doc, thank you for being a member for a month. Shout out to you. Rose Gold, thank you for being a member for 3 months. Chrissy, thank you for being a member for 3 months. Kraken Studios, thank you for being a member for 3 months. You said calling it now. Second Jane Doe will come forward too. I think that there needs to be a complaint. I mean, this cannot be the only complaint that's out there. Supernatural Share, thank you for gifting memberships. Thank you. And Eat More Pizza, thank you for gifting. You guys are awesome. This cannot be the only thing. Wow, maybe Child USA doesn't have a traditional spiritual values class in their bylaws. I don't think so, Aaron. Um, I don't know. That's a great point. I'd like to know where do we go from here? Let me remind everybody, okay? This is the board. All these esquires, all these people, all these attorneys right here representing sexual assault victims, survivors with dignity, the sex trafficking laws that they represent. Look at this right here, treasurer of the board, child sex abuse litigation and victims. Okay, Miss Henderson right here, who participated in a lifetime uh, series about Epstein. Do they know this? Do they know that there's an act, that there's this complaint out there? And if he did it to this Jane Doe, how many other Jane Does do we have that we don't even know? How many others? Anybody? I just want to know. I just have a question. I have a lot of questions. If you sit there and you stand for victims, I'd like to know why was this, why are we silent? Why are we silent? Is that why Mike Rinder didn't do anything to remove Brian Kent from the board? Well, yeah, Mike Rinder, how come Brian Kent has been removed from the Child USA board? I mean, sir, did you know what was going on here? Because my understanding is that the Jane Doe told a lot of people about what happened, and y'all just kept it hush, 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 silent. This is a scandal. An attorney's not going to this investigation. He's not going to risk his law license to put this out there. I guess. I mean, when you lie with fleas, right? What do you get? When dogs lie with fleas, what do you get? Who's the flea and who's the dog? A lot of basic violations. A lot. I don't understand why this is okay. I don't understand why this is okay. Y'all tell me why what where do we go from here? Mm. This Jane Doe is a friend of Mike Rinder's. Does he not believe her? Why would he done nothing? We don't believe this Jane Doe? She's a victim. Do we not believe this victim? We sit there and we did nothing and said nothing? The Jane Doe leaked this document to several people. Okay? Everybody, it's a known thing. It's been known. Do you believe her? No, nothing shocks me anymore. Nothing shocks me anymore. So where do we go from here? What do we do now? So it sounds like they met during the filming of the Aftermath show when they were doing the episode of the Jehovah Witnesses. You got a lot of referrals, a lot of clients. How come this isn't knowledge? How come this isn't public? You guys represent children. This is disgusting. If I was a Brittany or what's her name? If I was Miss Brittany Henderson, I wouldn't want to be sitting next to anybody on any board. I wouldn't. Right, Vic. Don't be surprised if they push to change the narrative. Well, I didn't know. I didn't know. I don't know nothing. You know, I, I know nothing. Right? No, you guys knew. If I was a Richard, a James, all these attorneys that say that they fight for this stuff, I would be very concerning. I would be concerned, period. Said, I recommend getting a hold of the lawsuit by the attorney who sued them for a similar issue. Yeah, right. There was a woman that sued. Hold up. Where's that paragraph? It's literally, it says that there was a woman that sued Brian Kent. They, she had an affair with him and she sued him. She sued him. How come, like, what is going on? And then he flipped it on her. He gaslights these people. And this is a man that was a former prosecutor. Whoa. Right. Right, Kraken. Hmm. Let me go back a little bit and see. You guys know I like to highlight your guys' comments. They need to investigate Mike Rinder too. And more I see the collab of Crime Network and the Audit Network and now SBTV, it just seems like all these charities are just a front group for little Bo Peep. SB, I see what you're saying. Okay, I think it's a typo. You can't wait for ATEC's pathetic attempt to shift the narrative. Not going to work, Johnny. Well, listen, do what you got to do. Thank you for gifting. Yes. Okay, let me just read. I just want to make sure I'm reading at least a couple of comments. Yeah, if you're just coming in, you got to go from the beginning. That's all I could say. Um, yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'd like to know. Lawyers can't lie to the court. If this is a complaint, I'm pretty sure they could prove it. It's on the footnotes. It's on the footnotes. I just want to know why, like, we all got to, like, I want to know. A lot of cases are in jeopardy and have been jeopardized over this. I mean, that's the concern. And I got this attorney by the name of Leo Glazer, who signs this document, is basically saying, like, listen, he's having to represent these victims knowing that this has happened, knowing that it puts this case in jeopardy. This man flipped it, and then there's actual receipts. And then he told people to delete stuff, or at least allegedly they believe that he told people to delete stuff. That is crazy. There was intentional grooming, absolutely. He said the perfect place for abusers is to sit at the very top so they can see and control everything. They always do. I was thinking about that too, Pika. I was like, it seems really intentional to sabotage the cases against Scientology. Rinder doing all of this on purpose, in my opinion. I don't know, you guys. I wouldn't sit there and be like, and it's this. People don't know this. There's a lot of people out there that don't know this. There's probably a lot of attorneys that are going to watch this. Y'all know this? What are you going to do about it? It's not okay. It isn't. In my profession, we deal with people. I was sharing with somebody, I said, as a social worker, you'll deal with people that will be inappropriate with you, that will do things or say things. And there are people out there that, you know, we have to be able to balance that, knowing that there's this position of power situation happening. That's what we do, not only for the client, but to protect ourselves, to protect the client and protect yourselves. That's what you do. You do things like this. You listen to your intuition. You step up and you speak up. You don't just sit there and be like, well, I may know something's going on. I may not. I cannot. And this is the person, the Jane Doe is friends with Mike Rinder. So, and she let a lot of people know, and this was leaked out. I mean, that's all I can say about that right now. I am done here. I'm going to take some time to process this. I'm sure a lot of people in the community want to process this. Let me know your thoughts about this. I don't know, you guys. I don't know what to say at this point other than this. We just we got to do better, And this found the Aftermath Foundation, Child USA Foundation, all these foundations, what it's taught me that people sleep with the enemy all the time. That's what they do. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. And I apologize. I was having like a physical reaction to reading some of this. Shout out to everybody. Oh no, Nora, Aaron, everybody that was in the chat. Thank you guys for being here. I'll let you guys go. Just let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you guys on the next one. Rabbits out. Bye, guys.